This video is to demonstrate creaming method cakes. First thing I'd like to show you is how to make cake circles. So this is a piece of parchment paper. You take it and you fold it in half, and then use a knife to cut it in half. And then you fold triangle. This is the center of your pan. And from here you fold, continuing to go around, almost like you're making an airplane. And you take your pan and you measure from the center of the pan out. And you end up with 2 cake circles. You want to make, for creaming method cakes, you want to make sure you grease the pan really well. This is a baking spray. You can use butter and flour. Put the cake circle in. Always spray the pan spray over a table or a sink, never over the floor. Make sure you get the corners. And now your pans are ready. Always make sure you get your pans ready before you start your cake batter. We'll put these aside and come back to the mixer. So we need to put our mixer together. On KitchenAid mixers, there's always some version of this. This particular one has this little divot here. So you put and then you have to pop it in to make sure that it's level. We're using the paddle attachment. Put that on. So we're going to make a lemon cake to demonstrate this, and we have 8 ounces of butter and 10 ounces of sugar that we're going to start with. The butter is room temperature, it's softened a little bit. And then 10 ounces of sugar. And I also am going to put in my ½ teaspoon of salt now. Raise the mixer up and starting on low. Raise the speed once you start it going, but you don't want to start at a high speed because then everything gets flung everywhere. You can see it's starting to come together. Let me turn it off for a minute and add my lemon zest. Now is a good opportunity to scrape down the bowl, make sure everything's up from the bottom. Starting on low again. And raising it up. And what I'm looking for is for it to be a little bit lighter in color and nice and kind of light and fluffy. For a cake, especially, you want to get as much air in the butter and sugar as you can, because that's going to help to leaven the cake. So it needs a little bit more. For a cookie, I wouldn't even go this far, because then they spread too much. And so when you run your spatula through it, it's real soft and comes away real easily. So that's about what you're looking for. And now I'm going to add my eggs one at a time, slowly, letting it incorporate. A cake batter is basically an emulsion, so you want to let the eggs incorporate before you add another one in. And it's always a good idea to crack them separately so you don't get shell in the cake. Turn it off and scrape down the sides. So once that's incorporated, we need to sift our dry ingredients together. So here I have my 11 ounces of flour, some ground cardamom, a half teaspoon of baking soda, and 2 teaspoons of baking powder. We sift for 2 reasons. 1, to make sure that nothing has gotten into our flour, and 2, to lighten it by adding a little air. Now we're ready to add our dry and our liquid, which in this case is yogurt. So since it's yogurt, or if it was sour cream, anything that's real thick, your batter is going to end up thick. If we were adding milk or buttermilk, it would be a thinner batter. So on low, you add some flour, and you add about 1/3 of your yogurt. Some more flour. So you want to add the flour ingredients in about 4 parts, and the liquid in 3 parts. Then you want to turn this off, lower it down, and fold in the flour, the little bit that's left, by hand, so you don't develop too much gluten. Scrape your beaters off. Just want to make sure there's nothing on the bottom that's not incorporated. And then in this case, we divide it equally between the 2 pans. And spread it out a little bit, but it should even out in the oven. And then with creaming method, you want to make sure there are no bubbles. So you wrap it for a second, and then in the oven it goes. right, the cakes have been in the oven about 40 minutes. They should be done. You can press on them, they come spring back nicely. Take them out. You can see they're pulling away from the sides of the pan a little bit as well. That means that's a good sign that they're done as well. And now we're going to let them rest for 10 minutes and then put the rack on top and flip them out and let them cool the rest of the way. I'm going to demonstrate how to make Swiss meringue buttercream. In this bowl, the mixing bowl, I've put my egg whites and sugar, and I'm going to move it over to my boiling water and whisk until the sugar has melted. It's pretty warm at this point. It should takes maybe 3 to 5 minutes. Definitely need to whisk the whole time or it will cook the egg whites. Once it's melted and it's not grainy, pull it off the water. Put it on your mixer. And then using your whisk attachment, you're going to whip on high until it's cool to the touch, and that does take 5 to 10 minutes. So. Our meringue is cool. So, and you want to actually put your finger in, make sure it feels cool to the touch, because if it's too warm, it'll just melt the butter and you get a Swiss meringue sauce as opposed to frosting. So keeping it on about that speed, we're going to start to add butter. And we had 4 egg whites in here, about 7 ounces of sugar, and now we're going to add 8 ounces of butter. And so you want to add it a little piece at a time, because again you're creating an emulsion. And you want to let it incorporate. The butter is nice and soft, room temperature, so it should incorporate pretty easily. If it's too cold, your frosting might break. And of course, if it's too warm, you get a sauce. Might need to scrape it down. And while it's tempting to add the butter faster, if you do, it might break, so. You can see it's starting to look a little more like frosting, but still not frosting. Now I'm going to add my vanilla extract and a little fresh lemon juice. And here's what my frosting looks like. Lovely, creamy, buttery, ready for my cakes. All right, and now to frost our cake. So I put the cake on a cake board and I've got it on another pan, just to make it a little easier to move around. And take some and put it in the center of the cake, and then smooth it along, working it around. You want to make sure you keep the middle frosting level. And then I take my cake and I place it top down, because that will give me a nice level top. And then I start working the icing around the sides of the cake. I put quite a bit around the sides. You want to make sure you get to the bottom and up over the edge of the cake. You can be real generous around the sides because you're going to come back around and smooth it out. Going over the top is real important, giving yourself a little lip to work with. As you're going around the sides, you want to keep in mind that you want to keep your spatula perpendicular to the cake. You don't want to bend it in or out, so you get nice straight sides. Then cleaning your spatula off, you smooth the sides out. Take off any excess. You see any places that are missing, add a little bit more on. Then you take icing and put it on top of the cake. And smooth it out into a nice level platform. And then those sides, you want to straighten out again. That way you have a nice level top to decorate. Clean your spatula off. Wipe it off. And then you take a little just fine mist of water, and that will help to smooth the icing out and give it a nice shine. You don't want to put too much water on. Just enough to smooth out the icing. Try to not miss any spots. Your cake's ready to eat.